All right, we're going to continue with our chapter 2 on page 22, the method. Separate the people from the problem. Perception. Understanding the other side's thinking is not simply a useful activity that will help you solve your problem. Their thinking is the problem. Whether you are making a deal or settling a dispute, differences are defined by the difference between your thinking and theirs. When two people quarrel, they usually quarrel over an object. Both may claim a watch or over an event. Each may contend that the other was at fault in causing an automobile accident. The same goes for nations. Morocco and Algeria quarrel over a section of the Western Sahara. India and Pakistan quarrel over each other's development of nuclear bombs. In such circumstances, people tend to assume that what they need to know more about is the object or the event. They study the watch, or they measure the skid marks at the scene of the accident. They study the Western Sahara, or the detailed history of nuclear weapons development in India and Pakistan. Ultimately, however, conflict lies not in objective reality, but in people's heads. Truth is simply one more argument, perhaps a good one, perhaps not, for dealing with the differences. The difference itself exists because it exists in their thinking. Fears, even if ill-founded, are real fears and need to be dealt with. Hopes, even if unrealistic, may cause a war. Facts, even if established, may do nothing to solve the problem. Both parties may agree that one lost the watch and the other found it, but still disagree over who should get it. It may finally be established that the auto accident was caused by the blowout of a tire, which had been driven 31,402 miles, but the parties may dispute who should pay for the damage. The detailed history and geography of the Western Sahara, no matter how carefully studied and documented, is not the stuff with which one puts to rest that kind of territorial dispute. No study of who developed what nuclear devices when will put to rest the conflict between India and Pakistan. As useful as looking for objective reality can be, it is ultimately the reality as each side sees it that constitutes it constitutes the problem in a negotiation and opens the way to a solution. Put yourself in their shoes. How you see the world depends on where you sit. People tend to see what they want to see. Out of a mass of detailed information, they tend to pick out and focus on those facts that confirm their prior perceptions, and to disregard or misinterpret those that call their perceptions into question. Each side in a negotiation may see only the merits of its case and only the faults of the other sides. The ability to see the situation as the other side sees it, as difficult as it may be, is one of the most important skills a negotiator can possess. It's not enough to know that they see things differently. If you want to influence them, you need to understand empathetically the power of their point of view and to feel the emotional force with which they believe in it. It is not enough to study them like beetles under a microscope. You need to know what it feels like to be a beetle. I felt our thing jump a little bit. Sorry about that. To accomplish this task, you should be prepared to withhold judgment for a while as you try on their views. They may well believe that their views are right as strongly as you believe yours are. You may see on the table a glass half full of cool water. Your spouse may see a dirty half-empty glass about to cause a ring on the mahogany finish. Consider the contrasting perceptions of a tenant and a landlady negotiating the renewal of a lease. The tenant's perception: the rent is already too high. The landlady's perception: the rent has not been increased for a long time. Tenant: with other costs going up, I can't afford to pay more for housing. Landlady: with other costs going up, I need more rental income. Tenant: the apartment needs painting. Landlady: he has given that apartment heavy wear and tear. The tenant: I know people who pay less for a comparable apartment. Landlady: I know people who pay more for a comparable apartment. Tenant: young people like me can't afford to pay high rents. Landlady: young people like him tend to make noise and to be hard on an apartment. Tenant: the rent ought to be low because the neighborhood is run down. The landlady's perception: we landlords should raise rents in order to improve the quality of the neighborhood. The tenant: I am a desirable tenant with no dogs or cats. And the landlady: his hi-fi drives me crazy. The tenant's perception: I always pay the rent whenever she asks for it. The landlady's perception: he never pays the rent until I ask for it. The tenant: she is cold and distant. She never asks me how things are. The landlady: I am a considerate person who never intrudes on a tenant's privacy. Okay, that's the end of that little chart. Understanding their point of view is not the same as agreeing with it. It is true that a better understanding of their thinking may lead you to revise your own views about the merits of a situation. That is not a cost of understanding their point of view. It is a benefit. It allows you to reduce the area of conflict, and it also helps you advance your newly enlightened self-interest. In the next part, we are on page 25 here from our book, Getting to Yes, Negotiating Agreement Without Giving In, by Roger Fisher and William Ury. And this second edition includes Bruce Patton of the Harvard Negotiation Project. Okay, why does this keep moving? Sorry about that. There we go. Let's see if that'll hold. Are you with me? Okay. Don't deduce their intentions from your fears. People tend to assume that whatever they fear, the other side intends to do. Consider this story from the New York Times. They met in a bar where he offered her a ride home. He took her down unfamiliar streets. He said it was a shortcut. He got her home so fast, she caught the 10 o'clock news. Why is the ending so surprising? We made an assumption based on our fears. It is all too easy to fall into the habit of putting the worst interpretation on what the other side says or does. A suspicious interpretation often follows naturally from one's existing perceptions. Moreover, it seems the safe thing to do, and it shows spectators how bad the other side really is. But the cost of interpreting whatever they say or do in its most dismal light is that fresh ideas in the direction of agreement are spurned, and subtle changes of position are ignored or even rejected. Do not blame them for your problem. It is tempting to hold the other side responsible for your problem. Your company is totally unreliable. Every time you service our rotary generator here at the factory, you do a lousy job and it breaks down again. Blaming is an easy mode to fall into, particularly when you feel that the other side is indeed responsible. But even if blaming is justified, it is usually counterproductive. Under attack, the other side will become defensive and will resist what you have to say. They will cease to listen, or they'll strike back with an attack of their own. Assessing blame firmly entangles the people with the problem. When you talk about the problem, separate the symptoms from the person with whom you are talking. Our rotary generator that you service has broken down again. That is 3 times in the last month. The first time it was out of order for an entire week. This factory needs a functioning generator. I want your advice on how we can minimize our risk of generator breakdown. Should we change service companies, sue the manufacturer, or what? I have 2 snoring puppies. And a lot of birds. Okay, the next part is discuss each other's perceptions. One way to deal with differing perceptions is to make them explicit and discuss them with the other side. As long as you do this in a frank and honest manner, without either side blaming the other for the problem, as each sees it, such a discussion may provide the understanding they need to take what you say seriously, and vice versa. It is common in a negotiation to treat as unimportant those concerns of the other side perceived as not standing in the way of an agreement. To the contrary, communicating loudly and convincingly things you are willing to say that they would like to hear can be one of the best investments you as a negotiator can make. Consider the negotiation over the transfer of technology, which arose at the Law of Sea Conference. From 1974 to 1981, representatives of some 150 nations gathered in New York and Geneva to formulate rules to govern uses of the ocean, from fishing rights to mining manganese in the deep seabed. At one point, representatives of the developing countries expressed keen interest in an exchange of technology. Their countries wanted to be able to acquire from the highly industrialized nations advanced technical knowledge and equipment for deep seabed mining. The United States and other developed countries saw no difficulty in satisfying that desire. and therefore saw the issue of technology transfer as unimportant. In one sense, it was unimportant to them, but it was a great mistake for them to treat the subject as unimportant. By devoting substantial time to working out the practical arrangements for transferring technology, they might have made their offer far more credible and far more attractive to the developing countries. By dismissing the issue as a matter of lesser importance to be dealt with later, the industrialized states gave up a low-cost opportunity to provide the developing countries with an impressive achievement and a real incentive to reach agreement on other issues. And the next is, look for opportunities to act inconsistently with their perceptions. Perhaps the best way to change their perceptions is to send them a message different from what they expect. The visit of Egypt's President Sadat to Jerusalem in November of 1977 provides an outstanding example of such an action. The Israelis saw Sadat and Egypt as their enemy, the man and country that launched a surprise attack on them 4 years before. To alter that perception, to help persuade the Israelis that he too desired peace, Sadat flew to the capital of his enemies, a disputed capital which was not even the United States, Israel's best friend, had recognized. Instead of acting as an enemy, Sadat acted as a partner. Without this dramatic move, it is hard to imagine the signing of an Egyptian-Israeli peace treaty. Give them a stake in the outcome by making sure they participate in the process. If they are not involved in the process, they are hardly likely to approve the product. It is that simple. If you go to the state insurance commissioner prepared for battle after a long investigation, it is not surprising that he is going to feel threatened and resist your conclusions. If you fail to ask an employee whether he wants an assignment with responsibility, don't be surprised to find out that he resents it. If you want the other side to accept a disagreeable conclusion, it is crucial that you involve them in the process of reaching that conclusion. This is precisely what people tend not to do. When you have a difficult issue to handle, your instinct is to leave the hard part until last. Let's be sure we have the whole thing worked out before we approach the commissioner. The commissioner, however, is much more likely to agree to a revision of the regulations if he feels that he has had a part in drafting it. This way, the revision becomes just one more small step in the long drafting process that produced his original regulation, rather than someone's attempt to butcher his completed product. In South Africa, white moderates were trying, at one point, to abolish the discriminatory pass laws. How? By meeting in an all-white parliamentary committee to discuss proposals. Yet, however meritorious those proposals might prove, they would be insufficient, not necessarily because of their substance, but because they would be the product of a process in which no people of color were included. They would hear, "We superior whites are going to figure out how to solve your problems." It would be the white man's burden all over again, which was the problem to start with. Even if the terms of an agreement seem favorable, the other side may reject them, simply out of a suspicion born of their exclusion from the drafting process. Agreement becomes much easier if both parties feel ownership of the ideas. The whole process of negotiation becomes stronger as each side puts their imprimatur bit by bit on a developing solution. Each criticism of the terms and consequent change, each concession, is a personal mark that the negotiator leaves on a proposal. A proposal evolves that bears enough of the suggestions of both sides for each to feel it is theirs. To involve the other side, get them involved early. Ask their advice, giving credit generously for ideas, wherever possible, will give them a personal stake in defending those ideas to others. It may be hard to resist the temptation to take credit for yourself, but forbearance pays off handsomely. Apart from the substantive merits, the feelings of participation in the process is perhaps the single most important factor in determining whether a negotiator accepts a proposal. In a sense, the process is the product. And then the last little one I'm going to read before we start the next part of emotion. This one says, face saving. Make your proposals consistent with their values. In the English language, face saving carries a derogatory flavor. People say, we are doing that just to let them save face. Keep some of that wind out. People say, we are doing that just to let them save face, implying that a little pretense has been created to allow someone to go along without feeling badly. The tone implies ridicule. This is a grave misunderstanding of the role and importance of face saving. Face saving reflects a person's need to reconcile the stand he takes in a negotiation or an agreement with his principles and with his past words and deeds. The judicial process concerns itself with the same subject. When a judge writes an opinion on a court ruling, he is saving face, not only for himself and for the judicial system, but for the parties. Instead of just telling one party, you win, and telling the other, you lose, he explains how his decision is consistent with principle, law, and precedent. He wants to appear not as arbitrary, but as behaving in a proper fashion. A negotiator is no different. Often in negotiation, people will continue to hold out, not because the proposal on the table is inherently unacceptable, but simply because they want to avoid the feeling or the appearance of backing down to the other side. If the substance can be phrased or conceptualized differently so that it seems a fair outcome, they will then accept it. Terms negotiated between a major city and its Hispanic community on municipal jobs were unacceptable to the mayor until the agreement was withdrawn and the mayor was allowed to announce the same terms as his own decision, carrying out a campaign promise. Face saving involves reconciling an agreement with principle and with the self-image of the negotiators. Its importance should not be underestimated. All right. Thank you for being with me. Thanks for being with me and letting me read to you with birds in the background, sun in the sky, old road. The next part will be about emotion. This one was perception. So the next little video, like I said, this is chapter 2 and it is very long. So thank you. I appreciate you.